It's now my great pleasure to introduce as the final speaker, and I think it's really good that you're able to, not the final speaker, the penultimate speaker, Pradeep Passi, who's our Pro-Vice-Chancellor for Social Justice and Equity, to give us some of our thoughts here at Salford University and some of his thoughts on the themes we've been discussing today.
So it's great to be here. Great to see so many people in the room this morning. My role, and I think I've got probably the best job title in the university, is Pro-Vice-Chancellor for Social Justice and Equity. And my role really is to sort of try to bring to life some of the things that are in that corporate strategy that Simone talked about earlier on around social justice. But as Professor Giron has just said, let's be clear, principles of social justice as we know them are under attack. As Professor Giron said, in some places the very word equity is being demonized. We see President of the United States of America removing all references to DE&I. We see the normalization of abuse and hatred, and even the rolling back of some commitments around environmental sustainability. And yet, we live in times where inequity and injustice is actually getting worse, where we're seeing awful and tragic loss of life, innocent lives, bloodshed in Europe, across the Middle East, and in parts of Africa, where, according to the United Nations, 71% of the world's population is now living in countries where income inequity is getting worse. Even here in the UK, in a recent report from the Institute of Health Equity, it was found that poorer people were dying increasingly younger than richer people as that life expectancy gap grows. You would expect in 2025 that gap to have kind of narrowed, but actually it's getting worse. And then if you add in the intersections of ethnicity, gender, disability, and so on, then even more acute inequities are revealed. However, for me and for the university here, these facts actually throw down a challenge and actually an opportunity to redouble our efforts through our educational and research provision to really ensure that we are positively impacting on fairness, justice and equity. Because actually, as has been said earlier on, education and research are actually critical components of building social justice. You can't do it without that. And it's why here now at the University of Salford, we are kind of exploring how we can do that and what more we can do in that space. Now, we already do some great and important work under that umbrella in areas such as access to university through our student support, on sustainability, on health inequities, and so on. But our ambition now is to do more. And we are now writing the next chapter in our story here and begun to do some real thinking about how through our education and research we can build fairness and equity for our students, for our colleagues, and actually the communities that we work with, both locally here, but also globally. But the crucial bit in that is to think about how we bring in the communities that we work with. How can we think and act with? That's the really important bit, think and act with. So we're just at the early stages of this, so apologies if I've got all of the answers at the moment, and I'm going to be posing some questions along the way, hopefully to kind of just get you thinking a little bit about this. But first of all, I just wanted to share with you a quote from Amartya Sen, who is one of the great thinkers of our time. He received the Nobel Prize for Economics in 1998 and was very much interested in welfare economics, looking at the link between economies, resource allocation and societal well-being. And he also wrote quite a bit on ideas of justice. And I promise I'm not about to launch into a full-blown economics or philosophy lecture. That's well beyond my expertise. But what I will say is that when we're thinking about social justice, it is important to have some of those philosophical foundations on which to pin our actions. But actually equally important are the practicalities of what those approaches look like, the impact that they might have, and how well understood they actually are in the community. And what Sen said in this quote is that what moves us reasonably enough is not the realization that the world falls short of being completely just, which few of us expect, but that there are clearly remediable injustices around us which we want to eliminate. Now that sounds like a fairly straightforward quote, but actually what Sen was doing is critiquing the great philosophers that went before him, including Plato and John Rawls, who wrote extensively about building the perfect just society. I'm saying, well, actually, that might not be possible. So let's focus on what we can do in actually removing injustice, where remediable injustice, where we see it. And I know that there is a collective will in this room to sort of address remediable injustice. I suspect I'm preaching to the converted in this room. Particularly those in our doorstep. We talk globally, but let's just talk a little bit more locally at the moment. And Salford is a great, vibrant, exciting and happening city. It's got a great community spirit, and the future really does look bright for Salford. But I'm also well aware of the challenges that lie very much on our doorstep here. And some say here in Salford, it's a tale of two cities. But overall, Salford still is the 18th most deprived area in the country. And according to the Greater Manchester Poverty Action, 22% of children in Salford live in poverty. We know in Salford that literacy levels in children and young people are not what they should be. And the number of 16 and 17-year-olds who are not in education, employment or training is well above the national average. And this matters because all of these factors directly connect to the future economic growth of the region, the jobs and skills agenda, and indeed social well-being in the Salford area. Now, there's already a lot of excellent work going on to try and remedy this from the council, for example, in their child-friendly city initiative, the brilliant voluntary sector that work across the city. And I've recently been speaking to charities such as Loaves and Fishes and Salford Foundation, who are doing some phenomenal work to try and remedy some of those inequities, or actually, as I call them, injustices across the region. And that they are the types of injustices that are remediable. But of course, the remedies lie in a collective and a collaborative approach. There's no one organisation that will be able to solve those things alone. But critically, education and research play an important part in that. So the first kind of question I'm just going to kind of throw out there, not for discussion, but just to get you thinking, is what more can we do to strengthen collaboration that will have greater impact on remediable injustices across Salford? I'm going to mention freedom of speech. A couple of people talked about this, but this is really critical, and I don't make any apologies for mentioning it again. And I would argue that freedom of speech is intrinsically linked to the advancement of social justice. You can't have one without the other, because by enabling individuals and groups to express their views and advocate for change, it helps to highlight injustice. It mobilizes public support. It drives legislative and societal reforms. You know, where would we be without the suffragette movement, without the civil rights campaign, without climate change campaigns and the LGBTQ movement and so on? However, there is currently across the globe a massive tension as people both argue that freedom of speech is being unfairly restricted, probably by people like me. We call them wokerati. Love that word, wokerati. And others arguing that actually those restrictions on freedom of speech are necessary to protect people from harm and abuse. Really, really difficult. But let me be clear, there's no place for unlawful harassment, discrimination and abuse of any kind here at the university. But as a university, we do believe in free speech and academic freedom, and that you have to have spaces to allow those difficult discussions, difficult conversations, even when you find that uncomfortable and possibly offensive. There has to be reason, right? And without reasoning, and without having those different views in the tent, then I think that leaves us in a really difficult space. And if we can't have those debates and discussions and challenges in a university, then I think, quite frankly, all hope is lost. So ultimately, I see free speech as a critical part of the knowledge equity, and social justice equation. So question 2 is around how can the pursuit of social justice and free speech safely support each other? Now, what is the role of education and research in building social justice? Well, education, if done well, should play a pivotal role in building social justice and prosperity. It can serve as a mechanism for breaking cycles of poverty and discrimination by providing individuals with the knowledge and skills necessary to participate fully in society as they choose. And I refer back to those literacy levels in Salford. Salford has aspirations to have economic growth. How can you do that with those kind of literacy levels? So I'm a sort of firm believer that societies can move closer to achieving social justice, creating a more inclusive world through equitable education. And early years learning in schools and college obviously play a role in that. But I'm also proud of the work here at the university, where we kind of work really hard to provide that equitable education. And Simone's mentioned that 80% of our students come from a widening participation background. But there's, even within that, there's more work to do in access to education. And there are questions around whether there's more to do, for example, around white working class boys, or those who have been through the care system, or for those who perhaps missed out on key educational experience in their early years. We do some great work with university here, alongside the University of Manchester, co-support the Into University initiative, which is having some great results locally here in opening up university as an option for young people who may never have considered this. And there's also our partnership with the Tutor Trust, where our students are supporting children in Salford to develop their literacy skills. And I can see Lynn in the room is kind of very much leading on that. And if we can find ways to build on this and those kind of initiatives alongside other interventions, then we can, as a university, contribute to changing lives and lead to more prosperity and equity across the region. We know there's more to do to ensure that students who arrive at our doors are able to succeed when they're with us. And in order to do this, education must absolutely connect with all of the students that we have, not that they have to connect with the education that we provide. And I think there's some thinking to do around what precisely that means. And so there's a job to do, I think, in terms of pivoting our thinking around that, to reimagine how we deliver education to our future students, many of whom will lead complex lives, who are digitally connected in equal measure to information and misinformation in ways that was really unimaginable 5 years ago, where the diversity of our students is breathtaking and inspiring. But it means that we have to change. And I would argue that in making social justice a foundational principle for our educational approaches, it will empower our students to enrich theirs and others' lives locally and globally. That approach to education might mean lots of things, and there are bits to be worked out there for sure. But I think it will mean making our education more relatable to student lives, more personalised, that brings more of the student into that education process, that brings more of our communities, businesses and global perspectives into that process, and vice versa. And a socially just education would make the student-university community relationship much more interconnected and mutually beneficial. And we probably need to be more confident and unapologetic about the use of technology in that education. And I know Simone has mentioned, is very much leading on our educational delivery plan to transform that over the next few years. So just another question, what would a socially just education that benefits the student, the university and the communities we work with look like by 2030, 35? We go beyond that, Simone, to 2040, 45. In terms of research, there's much work that we do here that impacts on reducing inequity or sustainability matters, and research obviously plays a critical role in advancing social justice. This is not just in the areas of social sciences, but just as important in the development of science and technology, which absolutely will be required to drive forward advances to equity and fairness. And our research here at the university touches on many of these themes, and we recently highlighted those in our It Starts at Salford campaign, which showed research that we do with communities in areas such as reducing people's heating bills, improving sound with those with hearing impairments, promoting ethical finance, mental health, broadening young people's knowledge through world literature and many, many other areas. But again, there's much more that we can do in that space of collaboration. You know, how do we create and share knowledge with our communities? Or are we kind of exploring through our research the right areas and asking ourselves the right questions that can have that impact? I'm going to stop talking now and take some questions in a moment. But just yes, so just for that question there, what are the remedial injustices that as a university we should be collaboratively researching to find solutions? So in this kind of quest to build social justice as part of our strategy, we are very much at the sort of start of that journey and that chapter. We do have a social justice advisory group that's working on this and helping to shape this, a paper that is in development, and we will be engaging internally and externally to determine what social justice means for us, to see if we can make it a foundational principle, work out what our areas of focus need to be, so that through our education and research and in collaboration with our communities, we can really make a difference in the short, medium and long term. So I'm going to stop there. Thank you.
It's time for one question, please. Floor is yours.
Thank you, Pradeep. My name's Kate Ardern. I'm one of the honorary professors here at Salford, and I'm the former Director of Public Health for Wigan, so a public health doctor by background. I just wondered, did you catch Mayor Burnham? Sorry, for folks who don't know who Mayor Burnham is, he's the Mayor of Greater Manchester, the Metro Mayor. He spoke at the Institute for Government yesterday, and it's well worth catching up with it on their website. But he spoke about the Greater Manchester vision to be a national demonstrator site for prevention, which I think is very pertinent to what you were describing. And he described 5 pillars: shelter, safety, opportunity, mobility, and support. So just listening to what you were saying, I think there's a massive opportunity working with the combined authority to think about how Salford might support those 5 pillars in terms of the educational offer, but also the outreach into the communities. So I wondered whether you'd thought about or already in contact with Eve Holt, who is the Director of Policy at the GMCA. I'm obviously strongly connected into that part of the world. So it's an offer to support the work, but also to perhaps think about how you link to Andy's vision for Greater Manchester, which obviously links the growth agenda to the skills agenda, to the better life chances agenda, and think about the prevention mission. The other opportunity, of course, is the health mission for the government, particularly the neighbourhood health mission. And I'm actually doing some work with that with the Health Mission Delivery Unit at the Department of Health and Social Care.
Thank you. Great question. And yes, we are in touch with Andy Burnham's office and working with that. But there's a lot more that we can do in that space. And in short, yes, we absolutely need to be connected together, all the different agencies across Salford and Greater Manchester, to kind of work on some of these issues. And as I keep saying, education research has to be a critical part of that solution. And yeah, I'll come and speak to you later. Thank you.